Thank you very much. See if I can avoid breathing into the mic too much today. What a nice crowd. I appreciate you all coming out. So I have to tell two short stories before I really dive into the monarch butterflies. And they're both stories of love, but both on a very different level. I did have the great privilege some 43 years ago to come crawling out of the mountains of Southern California with my colleague Noel Snyder, and between us we had the very first California condor egg ever to be brought into captivity. And it was a monumental time, and yes, we've experienced some wonderful successes then. But at the same time, shortly after, this woman walked by the door of my office. She would do it every day because my office looked out onto the road in and out of the San Diego Zoo and Wild Animal Park. And she just stole my heart. She was so beautiful. And she was a falconer, so I knew she loved birds. And I thought, well, with my huge reputation in the condor program and her fascination with birds, it was a marriage made in heaven, right? Wrong. She didn't care at all. Totally unimpressed. But a few months into my chase after her, she had gone on a holiday to Australia with her mother to go wine tasting. And on the way home, they stopped at the Melbourne Zoo, and they happened to be there on the opening day of a butterfly exhibit. So when she came back home, I stopped her and said, "How was your trip?" And her eyes lit up when she told me about butterflies. Now, I was formally trained as an ornithologist and didn't know anything about butterflies, but I knew I liked her. So I raised $1.5 million, and I opened the first butterfly house in the United States, actually, at the San Diego Wild Animal Park. And I'm very honored to introduce my wife of 36 years now, Sunny. So that amazing chase led me on to the story of butterflies. And our first traveling date was to go up the coast of California and tag monarchs. And it was up there that someone whispered to me, "You really have to see what happens in Mexico." And so we came to Mexico, we saw what was happening, and through the San Diego Zoo and Wild Animal Park, we did about 10 years of work, training guides, opening interpretive centers and that sort of thing around the monarch butterflies. At the same time, though, because of this reputation with butterflies, I was given the opportunity to lead a biological survey in a very remote region of Madagascar on the Maswal Peninsula. And the purpose of this expedition was to track the different forms, the different body forms of one species of butterfly that lived on this Maswal Peninsula up in the northeast. And no outsiders had been on the Maswal since the mid-1500s. And we were trying to evaluate the rainforest health to determine if it should be set aside as a national park. So on that trek, we found the butterflies we wanted, we got the data we needed. It ultimately was established as a national park and ultimately as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So we're really proud of that work. But in the course of doing that, we stumbled across a small village of people that they were not aware was there, the village of Antanambao. And about a year after our project, we received a call and they said, "We're going to set it aside as a national park, but in going through your notes, what's with this village of people and what should we do?" Well, I'm not an anthropologist, I'm a biologist, I don't like people. They're the problem, right? So it's like, well, I don't know. But I did know that in conservation around the world, we have often created human refugees in our efforts to implement conservation programs. And my suggestion was that they leave these people there and work around them. So they agreed to do that on the deal that my wife and I would agree to spend a good part of the next 3 years living in this small village, teaching them about conservation. Now you can immediately see how stupid that might be, right? First of all, they're living in thatched huts, there's no running water, no electricity, no cars, no motors, these people are living very sustainably, trust me. But it sounded intriguing and fun. So we went, and it was as dumb of an idea as it appeared. When we arrived in the village, they were terrified of us. We were like nothing they'd ever seen. The only thing they knew for sure was that we stole the spirits of adults and would eat small children. So it made us a little bit less than popular. In any event, after a couple of weeks of being ignored by the community, we decided it was time to leave. And as we were packing to go, an 18-month-old boy crawled into our camp and started watching us. He was the first child who hadn't run in fear. And there's a point to the story, trust me, we get to butterflies. But in any event, we befriended this little boy, Emilion, and decided that we would wait and stay. And Emilion would come to our camp every day and hang around with us, and pretty soon his friends started coming. And then Mom and Dad started coming to find out what the heck happened to their kids and make sure we weren't eating them. And ultimately one day when I came back from collecting butterflies in the forest, my camp was gone. It had been packed up and moved into their village.
Wow.
We worked there from late '96 into November of 1999 when we had to leave for what would be the last time. And in that period, sorry, I get weepy in my stories, you just have to get used to it, so bear with me as I do this. As we were getting ready to go, they threw a big surprise party for us. It was these people who had gone from being terrified of us, we'd kind of fallen in love with each other. It was very sad and very hard to go. And Sunny and I tried to sneak out of the village early in the morning, and we were intercepted by Emilion's mom and dad, and they gave us their little boy.
Oh my gosh.
And obviously we couldn't take him, and we left him behind. So, fast forward just a little bit. We left there at the end of November. That year was January of 2000. We came down to Mexico to see how we were doing with butterflies. And the sign to the reserve El Rosario had been scratched out. And instead of saying El Rosario, it said El Cementerio. In one night, about 750 million monarch butterflies died in one single night. Literally 3/4 of the eastern population of monarch butterflies. Just a huge catastrophic death. Only 2 months later, Cyclone Huda struck the east coast of Madagascar and wiped out our village. So, there's your introduction to why we come at this with incredible passion. We asked for money to go back and find Emilion. We obviously had failed at butterflies. Our work had been for nothing. The deaths occurred in spite of our passion, our training and efforts to educate and that sort of thing. And when we asked for money to go back and look for our little boy, all of the organizations that supported our work for the last 5 years in Madagascar all said no, because it was a little boy and not a bug or a tree or a forest. It was the ultimate in making humans an environmental refugee. And Sunny and I, ultimately, it took a couple of years for it all to happen. But we left our very tidy, comfortable careers and we launched our own organization. And we vowed we would never walk away from a little boy again. So that was our promise. In any event, so we come to Mexico for butterflies, and we have absolutely fallen in love. And before I get too deep into this, I have to tell you a real quick story. We bring people every year to see the monarchs, and it's a very exciting trip, and people really love it. But at the end of one of our trips, a guest announced in front of all of us at our farewell dinner that he had a confession to make. He said before he came on the trip, I had told him to plant milkweed. He was from Florida. I won't mention his name because I don't want to embarrass Fred. Fred Cumbie, in case you're curious. In any event, Fred had planted milkweed in his yard, and he was quite amazed when, just like I promised him, monarch butterflies came, and he was quite excited about it. But his confession was that after a few days he went out and he noticed that there were caterpillars all over his milkweed plants. So he got a pair of scissors and he cut them all in half. All right, so we're going to start at the beginning. The monarch butterfly is probably the most recognizable butterfly in the world. It's native to here, the Americas, but it has been introduced in many other places around the world. And if you take a class in Indonesia or Australia or anywhere else in the world on insects and you do the butterfly life cycle, more often than not, it will be represented by the monarch butterfly. very, very recognizable butterfly. So here's how their life cycle goes. The monarch butterfly starts with an egg. It'll lay an egg about the size of the head of a pin. Depending on the weather, it'll take a couple of days to maybe a week or 10 days before that little guy will hatch. Now, hatch is a funny word, and it means different things if you're a butterfly person or if you're a condor person. A bird hatches. They break their way out of an egg. To me, that's what hatching means. Butterflies, the larva eats its way out of the egg. The egg is its first meal. And in fact, the larva of the monarch butterfly, the second stage in its life cycle, is nothing more than a mouth, a gut, and an anus. And pretty much that's all it's going to do for the next couple of weeks is eat. And eat is a very specific thing for monarch butterflies. Butterflies tend to be host-specific. That is, their larvae will eat the vegetation from one group of plants only. So if you take a monarch butterfly caterpillar and put it on a basil plant or your lettuce, it's going to die. That easy. They depend on a plant called milkweed, and I've seen quite a bit of it here in Apihique, so I know somebody's sprinkling around because it's not native here. The reason they go to this plant is this plant confers a special protection on the butterflies. It has in it a cardiac glycoside, so milkweed is toxic. So those of you who are fussing it all with milkweed around here, I do encourage you to be careful. If you get the sap on your fingers and into your eyes, you can really do severe damage. It is a toxic and nasty little plant. And the caterpillar eating it would be quite susceptible to dying if it were not for one thing. It does not digest this cardiac glycoside. It isolates it in its body. And that cardiac glycoside then gets passed on to the butterfly and makes that butterfly toxic. The red and black color, orange and black color of the monarchs are warning signs to creatures around them that I am poisonous. You might eat one butterfly, but you probably won't eat another. There's a really classic video done by many, many years ago by a scientist who got a blue jay to eat a monarch butterfly. He videotapes this blue jay. Over the next few minutes, the blue jay just starts vomiting badly. Gets very, very ill. Doesn't kill the bird, but makes it very sick. For those of you who have had too much tequila or red wine, you know that it takes a long time before you'll have it again. Right? It's the same thing for a bird eating a monarch butterfly. So in any event, you get this larva, and it goes through 5 instars. That's 5 times that it sheds its skin. And scientists, because it's an insect, so they don't have a skeleton, their body is supported from the outside, so in order to grow, they always have to shed, okay? So it does this 5 times, and scientists are very creative about how we name every stage. The first instar is the first instar. The second one is the second instar. And on and on. You kind of see where that's going. And then they realize it gets kind of dull, and at the last instar they think, nah, let's do something different. So the last instar is called the wandering stage. And you've seen it in a butterfly larva, a caterpillar at some time. You may not know it, but you've seen it. It's that caterpillar that when you walk out of your house or down the street, you see it trudging down the sidewalk, crossing your patio, climbing a wall, and you feel really sorry for it. And if you're a nice person, you pick it up and you put it back on the plant. The butterfly or the larva goes, ah, crap, I just got off of here. They've left on purpose. They're leaving, they're wandering, they're getting away. The host plant is where there's a whole lot of food for predators potentially. So larvae know to get away. Not all larvae are toxic as the monarch is, so this is something general for butterflies. They get away from that host plant and they form a chrysalis away from it. Ladies and gentlemen, they do not form a cocoon. Don't come up to me and tell me you have a butterfly cocoon in your yard, because you don't. Moths make a cocoon, okay? They have a chrysalis, a pupa, but they weave a cocoon. They form that inside of a cocoon that's woven from silk. It's a characteristic of moths. So butterflies have an exposed chrysalis, and in the case of the monarch butterfly, it's an emerald-colored, beautiful, beautiful chrysalis marked with gold spots around it. In fact, the word chrysalis comes from the Greek, meaning valuable metals or ores, and almost all chrysalis have that on. It's thought to help them mimic drips of water and things like that, so their predators are distracted away from eating them. Now, if you crack open a chrysalis as soon as it forms and look inside, guess what you'll see? Soup. Period. Just green soup. There's No structure in there, there's no nothing. But buried in that green soup is a blastodisc, a little germinal cell that has the DNA fingerprint to tell that soup to make a monarch butterfly. One of the greatest miracles that you could witness in nature. Depending on temperatures, after a week or a couple of weeks, the butterfly will form inside there and emerge from the chrysalis as the adult. Now, you don't see baby butterflies or adult butterflies. They're all adult butterflies. Butterflies don't grow. Butterflies come out as big as they're going to be. If the little larva ran out of food at some point and formed a really little pupa, and the butterfly comes out as little, it's just little. Like some people I know. We won't go into them. I've already embarrassed Fred Urqhardt, who lives in Florida. I can get you his address. In any event, so that's roughly their life cycle. And then where the monarch throws it into a real mess is, of course, with migration. Migration's not typical amongst the insects. Here in Mexico, we talk about the eastern population of the monarch butterflies. So let's start with what we'll call the Methuselah generation of monarchs. In the course of a year, there's usually about 4 generations of monarchs, give or take 3 or 4 generations. The final generation of the year, the one that emerges in the late summer, is called your Methuselah generation. It lives about 10 times longer than any of the other generations, and it flies south. So a butterfly that emerges, say, in southern Canada as the Methuselah generation will fly up to 3,000 miles in order to reach the mountains of Michoacan. And we know this because of an amazing man named Fred Urqhardt, a Canadian. Fred's story is a great story, and I love sharing. And if you saw me get emotional about my little boy, I can get emotional about Fred. Amazing science by amazing people. It has to be appreciated. Fred, as a small child, would collect butterflies and pin them to cardboard. Kill them first, but it wasn't a torture thing. He would pin them to cardboard and collect them. But he was fascinated that most of the butterflies were there all the time in Canada. He knew that they went dormant in the winter when it got cold and all. But the one butterfly that was never there when weather was bad was the monarch. It was gone. And he used to start chasing them as a kid, and he lost them at the border with the United States. So Fred decided he was going to find them, and he went to school, got a degree in entomology. While he was going to school, he met a lovely woman named Nora, also studying, and together they decided that they were going to find out where the monarch butterflies went. And they decided to do that by putting a tag on butterflies. Now, once again, this is a very different world for me. When we were tracking California condors, we would put tags on them that had batteries, solar panels, antennas, the whole bit. I slapped one of those onto a monarch butterfly. He was still there the next day. It's clearly not going to work. It's a whole different system. And Fred knew that. He was no dummy. He developed a sticky glue that put on a piece of paper about the size of a hole punch. And he would just have his phone number and a serial number on there. Now, behind that serial number, though, there's a butterfly. So Fred would catch a butterfly. He would determine its gender, male or female. He would estimate how old that butterfly was. He would put down when he tagged it and all that sort of thing, and then release it. So there's this data bank behind it. Now, I just have to tell you this one story because I like making women nervous. Not really, but in a nice way nervous. When we look at a butterfly, we can tell males from females. The male has a gland on his hind wing that you can see, a black spot, and the female does not, so it's a very easy differentiation. When we get a female, we do get nosy, and we want to know if she's had any boyfriends or not. I mean, who doesn't want to know that, right? So we found that sex is very, very competitive in nature. And every man wants to be first, and last, ideally. That's how they guarantee that the babies they raise are their own, okay? So a monarch butterfly female emerges from her chrysalis, she mates. The male inserts a sperm BB, a hard pellet that goes up inside her and blocks her oviduct. So even though she might mate with other males, their sperm has to get past his sperm BB. And his sperm BB has to melt before that happens. So if we catch a female, we can palpate her abdomen, and we can find out how many boyfriends she had. Be grateful you're human. In any event, Fred quickly learned that tagging 10 or 20 butterflies wasn't going to solve the problem. and he needed a lot of help, and he needed people with nothing to do. The United States was a veritable gold mine. His first stop was all the hippie communes across the eastern United States. He visited every pot-smoking, drug-taking hippie commune he could find and taught them how to tag butterflies. And as you might imagine, it was psychedelic, man, they got into it. And they tagged a lot of monarch butterflies, and over the years, he started getting returns, and again, he lost the monarch butterflies at the US-Mexican border. And I'm going to have to speed this story up, or we're going to be here all day. I just love this story. In any event, he got to the Mexican border and lost them. At this point, Fred was aging out. He had a pretty serious heart condition. His doctor told him to give this up, but he was a man of huge passion, and it's that kind of thing that chokes me up. But the other thing that chokes me up is that it is so often the woman in our lives who saves our butt. Fair enough? And in this case, Nora stepped up for Fred, and she said, we're going to have to step this up a little bit, Fred. We don't have that kind of time. She did a radio program that was aired in Mexico City, telling people they were looking for the monarch butterflies. A stroke of genius, obviously. In any event, a man who was down here working in an underwear factory, he was developing techniques for making sure that they had good elastic in your underwear. He heard that story, and like a lot of good expats coming down at that time, no offense to anyone here, he had a local girlfriend. Her name was Catalina. Catalina was a Purépecha woman, is a Purépecha woman. She's still with us. Catalina told him about these butterflies that would come to her village every year, and that many of the people had treated them like the lost souls of their loved ones. In other communities, they thought they came in such huge numbers, they thought they would suffocate the forest. So Catalina and her boyfriend went on a search for the monarch butterflies. When they thought they had found them on a mountain called Cerro Pelon in Michoacan, they reached out to Fred and Nora. The butterflies they found were at 11,000 feet, and Fred's doctor told him, under no circumstances do you go. So what? Fred and Nora came down. At that time, they had quite a reputation. They were accompanied by a National Geographic photographer. And Fred struggled into the mountains, and what he found was 986 tons of monarch butterflies. You could stand in the forest and hear branches break out of the trees under the sheer weight of the insects. Approximately 1 billion monarch butterflies. Fred was a little pissed. One of his first questions to the indigenous communities is, how come you never told anyone about this? The answer was, doesn't this happen everywhere? They had no reason to believe that it didn't just happen everywhere. With that, then, Fred sat on a stump. He had lost his breath. He was not feeling well. He had his walking stick with him, and I can tell you this with accuracy because there's a Nat Geo photo of it. He sat down to catch his breath, and he asked that question that every scientist has to ask. Are these my butterflies? I don't know. I don't have any proof. And out of 1 billion butterflies, as he sat there on the stump, he stirred a pile of dead butterflies and found one with his tag. Absolutely breathtaking story. It is only a decade or so after that Sonny and I started coming down to see the monarch butterflies, and then 2000, as I mentioned, the enormous die-off. And today, Mexico sees about 10% of the monarch butterflies that were here when Fred came down. And the questions are obvious. Why? And there's a million answers to why. A lot of them occur in Canada. A lot of them occur in the United States with our agricultural programs, pesticides, herbicides, genetically modified crops, and the like that allow us to use these pesticides more broadly. There's a whole number of things. They are running a veritable gauntlet to get here to Mexico, including weather and climate change. When they get here, they rest in these mountains in the numbers I've described to you. And on this winter, they froze to death. Well, why? Why would they freeze to death at a place that they've been going to for as long as history has recorded monarch butterflies? They died because the trees had been thinned out. If you crawl into bed at night and you've poked holes into your blanket, where are you the coldest? right next to the hole, right?
Yeah.
One of the things we know is that these monarch butterflies leave a chemical scent on the tree, a pheromone marking these trees. When their great-great-grandchildren come back, they go to those trees where that scent is. And if that scent is on the ground with a felled tree, they'll fuss around that felled tree for a while, and then what they'll do is roost in the trees as close to it as they can get. The hole in the blanket formed by the ancient Oyamel fir forest of the transverse range of the Sierra Madres. And those holes killed the butterflies. Now, why were there holes in those trees? Well, because there's indigenous communities around, those tens of thousands of people who are cooking on an open fire. I'm going to throw some stunning facts at you, and my wife hates when I do this because she says people glaze over when you do it. So I'm just going to touch on them very quickly. If you have any doubt about any of them, pick up my business card and write to me, and I will send you third-party verification of the things I will tell you. The #1 killer of human beings in the entire world is a cooking fire. The 3-stone fire that a lot of local people in Mexico, probably right here in this community, but certainly in the more rural areas, that cooking fire is the most deadly thing they can do. A woman spending her day inside over an open fire making tortillas is inhaling the health equivalent of 400 cigarettes a day. The deaths are skewed towards women and children because the men are too smart to go in the house when mom's cooking. And mom's taking care of the kids, so they're in there with mom. So that's how that goes. These fires are extremely inefficient. Every family around the monarch butterfly reserves is using on the average 16 trees every single year to cook and stay warm. This is why Emilion was important. We promised we would take care of people in the work that we did for conservation. We adopted a stove designed in Michoacan by Hira, a rural development group, a stove called the Patsari. It was a stove designed by Mexicans for Mexicans, and we started introducing it in the monarch butterfly reserves. Today we have built 17,000 stoves surrounding the monarch butterfly reserves at a cost of a little over $500,000 every year to continue this rate of installation. Today we know that every year there are 100,000 less trees cut every year because of our stoves. We know that there are healthier families. There are kids who are able to go to school because they don't have eye infections and respiratory infections. There are mothers who are able to grow old and take care of their families because of these stoves. We also know that each stove offsets about 3 tons of carbon emissions every single year. To tell you what that means, really quickly, is that's roughly the equivalent of a car in the United States every year. So for every stove we build, we take a car off the road for a year. If you provided every person in the world who's cooking on a 3-stone fire, if you provided every person in the world with one of these stoves, and they used it, that's important, it would remove every vehicle from the road in the world. The climate impact of helping the poorest people in the world live better lives could solve a lot of our climate problems. And climate is an issue for the butterflies, for us, and for our children and grandchildren. So we're very, very proud of our work. And I'm running out of time here, so I want to just tell you a couple of things rather than do a little bit of self-work. Today, we have a little Airbnb way up on the hill. And today we carried a bunch of books coming down here. First, Sandy and I were sharing the bag because it was pretty heavy. And then I felt really sorry for you, so I carried the bag. And it was really heavy. And the deal I made was that I'll carry them down if you carry the leftovers up. So if you have any heart at all, we will get a book. They're 250 pesos. It's like going to lunch, I mean, for Pete's sake. And I'd be happy to autograph them if you'd like. I'm happy to leave it alone if you're embarrassed to know me. So we can work that out any way you like. And if you're curious, of course, learning more about what we do here and abroad, pick up the book. But I am going to ruin one part of the book for you. We launched EcoLife in 2003, and it was called EcoLife, Eco for the Environment, which was my beginning passion and life for my little boy, our little boy. But we worked hard for 16 years, and we built an organization that does wonderful things for people and our environment. 3 of our donors came to us in 2016 and said it was time to go back to Madagascar, and that they had just a few criteria for us. One, that we had to bring a small film crew with us, which I really didn't like. And the other one was that we stay in Madagascar until we knew what happened. And so in 2016, we went. The village of Antanabao was, of course, gone. It had been destroyed in the storm. And we spent a month in the bush hunting and working. And we came to a spot on the river where we had expected we would be met by some of the survivors from the village. And there was literally nobody there, just a couple of people on the bank. We got out of our pirogue. We'd come into the region in a small dugout canoe. We got out of our pirogue, which is a very unsteady little boat, and I nearly fell out, and a young man grabbed my arm, and it was me, Leon. So he's alive and well, and the story's in our book. The book covers everything from condors to Mexico to Madagascar, and a little bit about love, because I think it's important for all of us. So thank you so much for your time today.